Hello everyone, welcome back to Party Wipe Gaming. I am Rindus, and once more we are playing Pyre, or rather, we're finishing up Pyre, because as of last episode, or at least the episode you'll see before this one, because I'm just going to double upload this because the epilogue ran long, we're done with Pyre, so we're getting the wrap-ups of everybody's life after our revolution. So, starting this up, I'd clicked Sir Deluge, so it looks like we're going to find out what happened to him. All his life, Sir Deluge had fled from one danger to find himself facing another. He had escaped the war-torn waters of the Sea Dominion, he had escaped the blood border of the Commonwealth, and now he had escaped the rites. After the rites had ended, many exiles wrapped up in the ancient test were crestfallen as their last chances to return to their homes vanished along with the stars above. But Deluge did not mind, for this outcome meant that, at last, there was no burden of responsibility weighing down on him. While most of his fellow exiles of the Pyre Hearts yet longed for the waters of the Sea Dominion, driven as ever by their impulses towards conflict, Deluge settled down. With him remained one of his companions, one Lady Seagrass, who had taken a liking to him for some reason. I don't recall. Or maybe she was just there. Reportedly, they disappeared into the waters of the Worm Gulf, which may begin to explain the significant increase in worm population observed in the vicinity. Giggity giggity. Alright, that was nice of them. This guy, I want to know what happens to him. After the final liberation rite, Lyndall refused to believe that the rites had truly ended. He would sit through night after consecutive night, staring at the blackness of the sky, awaiting any kind of sign that he might gain another chance at freedom. No such sign ever came. His fellow accusers started to express concern for him. Survival had become their top priority. One's liberty had slipped from their grasp. But Lyndall dismissed them as weak fools. He insisted rather forcefully. At any evening now, the stars would shine for him again, and mark the way towards his inevitable freedom. He was, of course, mistaken. The others of his triumvirate were left with little choice but to abandon him. After that, the exile known as Lyndall the Liar was never seen again. Sucks to be him. However, there have since been sightings of a bedraggled demon who wanders the downside and bears Lyndall's cruel countenance, suggesting he yet lives. After the cycle of the rites had ceased, witch Udmilde returned to the Flagging Hands region, where she sealed herself within the pit of Milithy. There, even her fellow exiles of the Withdrawn allegedly grew unnerved after a time, and left her to her vile work. Sometime later, the pit of Milithy erupted into flame. So intense was the conflagration that it could be seen all the way from Jolmir Valley. Arson was suspected, though the cause was never verified, and many bog dwellers in the region were forced to flee. A tempest blowing from the north finally quenched the flames. When at last the ashes settled and the grounds were cooled, the site of the fire was scarred beyond recognition. No trace of witch Udmilde could be found. As for the contents of the pit of Milithy, which notably included a profane object thought to be the remains of Islak, all of it was gone as well. Back in the Saurian Union, Udmilde's repeated threats of the return of Islak were thoroughly investigated, and no precedence was found for any of her claims. When manly Tinderstrav realized the rites had ended and that he no longer could return to the Commonwealth through this ancient means, he was outraged. Sucks to be him. Ooh, excuse me. He cursed the scribes, spewing forth a slew of blasphemy as to be very unbecoming of one of his high status and bearing. When he last calmed himself, he focused all his energies on attempting to find another means of homecoming. He maintained regular contact with his wealthy family on the other side via messenger end, and used their vast resources to explore other means of escape. He tried using an elaborate pulley system. He attempted to retrofit a flying black wagon with superior propulsion. He tried an imp raft, a hot air balloon, even prayer. Nothing worked. There was only one way to escape the downside, and now it was gone. Tinderstoff bankrupted his family in these vain attempts. At last, such was his shame that he retreated to the teeming woods of Black Basin to Cinderroot. There he yet wallows, complaining to his comrades of the chastity who still put up with him, either about his own misfortune or the latest news from the other side. Okay, how miserable. Once it became clear to Ignarius that the rites were drawing to a close, he knew that it was time for him and the Tempers to call it quits. But first, he and the Tempers decided to celebrate, and that they did, for many, many nights. The revelry did eventually subside. The exiles parted amicably, blah, 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 and went their separate ways. That's nice. He roamed the downside then, searching for some meaning in his life, sometimes taking odd jobs requiring his brute strength. He never remained alone for very long, and took on many lovers in his time. Oh, well, see, now I don't feel bad for Jody. However, he sometimes thought about the the one he had called Curly Horns and what became of her. Though his glory days as the most powerful conductor of the rites had long since passed, he always enjoyed the fearsome reputation he had cultivated at the time. Barker Ashpaw never had much interest in returning to the Commonwealth, for he always found its bylaws to be too stifling, so when the rites ended, he did not care, at first. Soon, he grew very bored. The rites had given his life a certain sense of structure that he had always needed. He missed the raw anticipation of it all. He decided to continue conducting the rites for the thrill of it. He bent some of the rules and replaced some of the objects, but it was close enough. His packmates, the dissidents, proved more than happy to participate. Thus, they ran against each other back in Jormir Valley. Gradually, other exiles familiar with the rites, as well as those who had not heard of it at all, started to take an interest. They ended up giving Barker Ashpaw some healthy competition. Oh nice, they formed their own little sports league. His old feud with Rookie Greentail ceased meaning anything to him, and he forgot all about it amid his new pursuits. Ultimately, even Barker Ashpaw, who had led such a directionless existence to that point, found something of a calling through the rites. Whether he took the rites less seriously than other exiles of his time or more was oft debated by those who watched him work. As the cycle of the rites drew to a close, it grew evident that a chance at freedom from the downside had forever slipped from Dalbert and Almer Oldpaw's grasp. Thus they, the exiles of fate, returned to Jormir Valley. There they struggled to get by, as exiles of the downside tend to. Sometime after the rite had ended, the Old Hearts at last heard the news of the Commonwealth had fallen. This was well after the fact, of course, but it brought old Dalbert great joy. Despite his forthright manner, he had no love for the nation that cast him down along with his son. Dalbert Old Heart passed peacefully in his sleep before the next new moon. Oh, that's sad. At least he died content, I guess. In his final days, he implored his son to undertake a pilgrimage to the scribes. Almer never shared his father's view of the scribes, but respected Dalbert's wishes, and so after a period of mourning, Almer began a new journey. One day during his travels, he ran almost headlong into another exile after paying homage to the Spring of Jormir. He was stunned to find that this was none other than the one he knew as Shay, from their days as adversaries in the rites. Well, he made them adversaries, she was their friend. Shay was overjoyed to see him, though Almer was unable to bring himself to understand why. Big dummy. Eventually, of course, he did, and they remained together, growing even more accustomed to their new lives on the downside. There you go. Not a day went by that Almer Oldheart did not think about his father and give thanks to him, and speak to him at morning and at night. Such a good boy. Would that the stars yet shone, for surely Dalbert's would be there among them, smiling down at his son, and watching over him and his kin. Such a good boy. Throughout her exile, Tamitha Thane was motivated by a single goal, to return to the Commonwealth and exact revenge on her ancient enemies. When she realized the rites had ended, and that she would never see her mountain home again, she nonetheless remained determined to aid her people however possible. She had gathered certain information pertaining to the intentions of the Nightwings, who had formed a pact to regroup on the other side after their liberation. Other such reports exposed certain weaknesses in the Commonwealth's defenses and revealed to the Highwing remnants the opportunity for a risky but potentially impactful strike. As Tamitha could not participate in the assault, she learned what happened well after the outcome. On the night known as the Scribe's Return, the Commonwealth had fallen. The Highwing remnants thus prevailed at last without even having to fight. Soon after the fall of the Commonwealth, Tamitha learned that her blood sister Pamitha was an accessory to the successful outcome. Tamitha was very skeptical of this, but as similar reports kept mounting, she soon accepted the prevailing opinion, however grudgingly. Once the messenger imp arrived bearing some sort of message, seeming from Pamitha, however, Tamitha turned it away. She would not give in to an impulse to forgive. See, and this is why I didn't let you go. Knowing that the conflict on the other side had ended, Tamitha retreated to the crags of the Black Basin and grew ever more distant. Well, those closest to her surmised that her inability to reconcile with her blood sister was at the heart of this, though, for her part, Tamitha never once admitted any such weakness. Well, sucks to be her. And now the douchebag. After the Shimmer Pool closed for what would be the last time, Orlick looked around him in the flickering light of the Nightwing's still burning pyre. He then turned to the Fall of Soliam and looked up toward the black, starless sky. He cursed the 8 scribes, then, one after another. After that, he strode forward, towards the waters coursing from the side of Mount Elodiel, and without hesitation cast himself down. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Orlick's body was never recovered. The drop from Mount Elodiel does not appear survivable, though Orlick did survive it once. That time, however, he was filled with fury. Such was the betrayal he had suffered when his fellow exile claimed his rightful freedom. This time, Orlick was filled with nothingness, and chose to leave the downside in the one way he still knew he could. The other Nightwings who were to witness this never forgot what they saw. Meh. Tizo. The imp called Tizo was the first of his kind to achieve liberty through the rites. While he was not the only imp trained in the way of the scribes, imps are native to the downside and thus care not for traveling abroad. This made them useful triumvirates. Yet Tizo had a different calling, and the Nightwings believed that he too could play a key part of Wolfred Sandalwood's plan. During the night of the Scribe's Return, inspired by the liberated exiles, the people of the Commonwealth demand new leadership. Okay. Downside, Legends of Hawupa Swallow. Afterwards, he became something of an icon, representing both the fall of the Commonwealth and the beginning of a new era. Wolfred Sandalwood would sometimes send him little gifts all the way from the downside. Despite the insurmountable distance between them, their friendship proved more than resilient. He often chirped about the reader of the Nightwings, with whom he built quite a rapport. The reader understood him perhaps better than anyone. And Tizo would often express wistful gratitude for all his time conducting the rites alongside the Nightwings, who made such sacrifices for him. And see, I didn't want to leave Tizo behind, because he was already so sad that he lost the other group, to tragedy and to ascension. I was like, hey, he may not need to go there, but keeping him with the group. Other than that, Tizo was diligent about his role as something of a living artifact, and helped interpret for the messenger imps that relayed news to and from the downside. Despite having gained significant celebrity, he never let it get to his head. Although he did take full advantage of his access to the Saharan the Saurian Union's fishing industry. He exploited that fish. After his liberation, Hadwin was instrumental in the events leading to the fall of the Commonwealth and was vital in the outcome of the plan. The peaceful outcome of the scribe's return was attributed to several key factors. One of them was the underlying ambition of the plan itself. Another was Hadwin's visibility among the people in the streets. Identified to be a liberated exile, he was believed to be Golathanian reborn. More importantly, however, was that one of the winged harps of the High Wing remnants accompanied him. She was later identified as Fikani Shang. Aw, he found her. That's great. So happy that happened. Good for him. Their bond was symbolic of what was at stake that night and proved vital to the peace that followed. In all his days as leader of the Saurian Union, Hadwin oft confided in his friend Jodario. Okay, they keep saying there's new stuff there, but there isn't. Despite her intense manner, there was no one whom he trusted more in times when circumspection was required. Hadwin would often think back about the vow he had made at the beginning of his quest for freedom. Although he cherished all the friendships he had made, he had pledged to Dario, Ruki, and the Reader of the Nightwings that they would all be free again together. His promise had come to pass, though he always knew that this was not his own doing. He was always deeply grateful to the other three, his closest friends. Oh yeah, we did keep that promise together. Wonder what would have happened if we didn't go. While the others who stood with the Nightwings were not all able to remain in contact thus, Hadwin thought of each of them often, and so in turn did they think of him. While the worm Gilman returned to the Commonwealth, he believed that he had regained something even more important than his freedom, his honor. Gilman relinquished his knighthood and declined an opportunity to serve as the captain on the Blood Border. He was not interested in fighting any longer. Yet, as is sometimes the case with those such as he, a circumstance soon came about in which there came a need for him to once again make use of his military training. Thankfully, however, the scribe's return ended peacefully. Gilman was on edge throughout the night, expecting violence to erupt at any moment, but the moment never came. When the matter was at last put to rest, then Gilman truly knew his time as a knight had ended. He declared to all those in earshot that he would never fight again. Unless, of course, there arose some other extraordinary set of circumstances again requiring him to fight, but he certainly hoped not. He still trained regularly, just in case, especially with his fleet-footed friend Ruki Greentail. He was always grateful for the counsel of the Reader, and would regale him over and over about the time they squashed the spawn of the Unfathomed Plurns. Oh yeah, we did do that. By that point, he had long forgotten about his days under the leadership of Sir Deluge, his former commander. Ooh. Sorry, hold on. Super loud plane flying over. Sorry. Breaking free of his abusive leadership was the first step towards gaining a bit of self-respect. Gilman never did return to his homeland of the Sea Dominion and was content to lead a monastic life on a small residence in the hills. It was just high enough to make him keep striving to conquer his fear of heights. Other than that, an intense daily training regimen and the occasional visit from an old companion was more than enough to keep him optimistic and engaged. He knew by then that honor was not something to be won, but a contract with oneself to be renewed each day. Pamitha. After regaining her freedom, Pamitha Thane found herself in a difficult position. Having once betrayed her people of the High Wing Remnant, she knew that she would not be welcome in her native home. She did not trust the Commonwealth either. Instead, she found her place among Volfred Sandalwood's agents, who were busy doing their part to fulfill the plan. As it turned out, the plan was a success, and Pamitha stood shoulder to shoulder with her fellow former exiles, and truly they were a sight to behold. A disturbing rumor later spread that night. The High-Wing remnants were slated to mount an assault, which for some reason never came to pass. Pamitha denied any knowledge of or involvement. Afterward, Pamitha played an active part in negotiating terms between the High-Wing remnants and the new nation that would become the Saurian Union. Her previous attempt at something of the sort led to her exile, and she must have felt some satisfaction to succeed this time around. Sometime later, Pamitha had an unexpected run-in with Rookie Greentail, with whom she had spent a fair amount of time while traveling with the Nightwings. Under these new circumstances, it turned out the two had more to talk about, and rather more in common. Giggity giggity. They would often put to test which one was able to outdrink the other. It is unclear as to which of them prevailed in the contest in the end. One day, Pamitha received an invitation to return to the High-Wing Remnant, where she was to be fully pardoned. She held out a hope that she might see her blood sister Tamitha there, knowing full well that Tamitha did not regain her freedom. Tamitha did later learn that Pamitha was welcomed back by her people. However, she never responded to her blood sister's attempts to contact her. Pamitha in turn did not expect forgiveness from her at any point. Nonetheless, she kept on trying to reach out, she said, to ruffle up her feathers just a bit. Later, when asked, Pamitha admitted that she felt as though she had no home to call her own. This was during an interview conducted amid an extensive trip abroad, for she had traveled thousands of leagues beyond the bounds of the Saurian Union. Pamitha continued to journey thus, citing that it reminded her of when she was younger and could fly unfettered. Alright. After her liberation, Jodariel soon became an icon of the movement that led to the collapse of the Commonwealth and the rise of the Saurian Union. Her horns and stern countenance inspired the people to believe that she was Soleam Mur, reborn. Really, and she became a great, if reluctant, leader. In the uncertain times that followed, Jodariel's seasoned expertise often came into play both in matters of security and of state. For instance, she conscripted and trained a team of volunteers in public safety. The community did not know what to make of such a cordial bunch at first, but soon came to value their service. They have stood for the people ever since, and we celebrate their founding day each year. She remained close with Hadwin, all through this experience, and they supported each other through their struggles many times. She often had to stop herself from fearing for Shay, whom she had tried to look after as much as possible in the downside. Soon, she would reassure herself that Shay was very capable of surviving on her own, and in fact, she was not mistaken. She never settled down with anyone, although from time to time she thought about Ignarius, despite herself. She continued training on her own, a regimen that grew stricter with each passing year. There were those who sought to train with her, and she sometimes obliged. There remained one other constant in her life. She would always remember her days among the Nightwings, and with fondness for the most part. Rookie. After Rookie Greentail earned back his freedom, he returned to a lavish welcome ceremony in the Commonwealth, as was the tendency for liberated exiles. It was everything he could have hoped for, and soon he was well off, surrounded by luxury and choosing between various exciting opportunities. Oh, thank you, dogs. Oh my god. However, he must have given in to his better judgment, as he did end up siding with Volfred Sandalwood's revolutionary forces, as he promised. On the night of the scribe's return, Greentail was there with the others, inspiring the masses. He never looked prouder, the very image of Jormur Minimanes himself. When dawn finally came, and it became clear that the Commonwealth that everybody knew would be no more, he realized many new opportunities awaited. Oh my god, these dogs are barking so loud. He began quite a lucrative career for himself, manufacturing and selling Reptor Club merchandise inspired by the downside. His main struggle was to meet demand. An aspect of his conscience cautioned him against making light of such a thing, but the money was too good, and soon his family was well off, as he always said. One of his orders of business was to seek out one of his old companions, Pamitha Thane, to whom he took a liking during his quest for freedom. Oh my god, why are they barking so much? They bonded further over love of drink and supported one another through uncertain times that lay in store. He also kept in close touch with Gilman, ever the perfect practice partner. They would train together often, taking care to stay in tip-top shape as much as possible throughout the years. Greentail always did his best to keep in touch with all his many friends and knew that he owed his fortunes to them. He made special point of staying close with the group of friends he had come to know so well during his time with the Nightwings, wherever they were. They shared a special understanding that even put Greentail at a loss for words sometimes. Alright, last up is our girl Sandra. I think that's everybody, yeah? Yeah. Nice. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, records of what happened to the Black Wagon of the Nightwings became inconclusive and contradictory. Some accounts suggest that the exiles of the Nightwings who remained in the downside continued to make use of the Black Wagon as their place of shelter and their means of travel. However, there is no record of what happened to the wagon's contents, such as the Book of Rites or the Beyonder Crystal, said to be haunted by the aberration Sandra the Unseen. One possibility is that when the lone minstrel took his leave, he took the Beyonder Crystal with him, for he was thus obliged. Bullshit, we got her. By this line of reasoning, however, the Black Wagon itself should have been taken also. Others remain skeptical that the Beyonder Crystal ever existed, or rather that the visions that it granted were anything other than the results of an active imagination or fever dream. The bog dwellers of the southern bogs offer still another explanation, for they are familiar with binding enchantments. If there existed such an object in which the Sisters of the Ark had been expelled for more than 800 years, then the enchantment would have expired along with the light of the stars. What this would have meant for Sandra and the Beyonders is difficult to say for certain, other than that it may have meant that they were finally released. Nevertheless, the fates of Sandra and the Beyonder Crystal remain unknown. What? That is rude. We spent all that time and we don't get to know? Yet other exiles from the Nightwings who claim to have seen this apparition all spoke of her with degrees of reverence or perhaps a little fear. Really? Ah, there we go. I was about to get mad. Can you believe this, reader? Honestly. Sandra has appeared before you, as well you can see. They are so far from the mark with all this nonsense. I am wont to laugh. In fact, here goes. She laughs. She is referring to the account of her. You sense she does not care for it. Well, let them gossip all they like. I merely wish that they would mention you, at least in the passing, when next they are at it, though they shall never know even the half of it, shall they? Sandra seems irritated by the incomplete account of what happened to her. The account is relatively flattering, despite a lack of detail. It could have been worse. Perhaps making some light of the situation will make her feel better. Yeah, let's laugh with her. You indicate to Shanda that the real truth of what happened between you would perhaps be too lascivious a tale to be told in such a format. She makes an amused sound at this. Perhaps that story ought to get out then. To think that they would go to all the trouble to make literacy accepted again, only to print such drivel. Anyway, let us keep going, lovely reader. We know the truth of it. That is what matters. She fades into the Beyonder crystal for now, and you tuck it away safe. Yeah, we kept our girl Sandra. Here's one more account which warrants mention. The Nightwings conducted the rites under the guidance of a reader. Little is known of him. However, some accounts of him begin to paint a picture. We know he was of common birth, weak-framed, though raised with the penchant for learning. The journey to the downside left him close to death. It was then that the Nightwings found him. They brought him from the brink and showed them a path. He pressed onward with the others. He made a vow to help his friends be free. Thus did the cycle of the rites commence its final turns. When the final rites arrived, the reader's freedom was at stake. That freedom he indeed achieved ere the morning's light. From that point on, accounts of him diverge. And it is said that the voice which troubled him he never heard again. Some say he helped to form the Saurian Union, though whether that is true, only he knew. Some day perhaps the reader's own star shall emerge. Then it shall pierce the dark of night in all its brilliant glory, until such time and ever after, all of us give thanks.
Their journey began on a barren waste where the reader arrived.
Woot. That is another game down, people.
When he arrived, book of rites awakened the Nightwings.
Is that going to make a picture?
Ignited the flame.
Oh, it is.
They follow the stars bound together, strands in our brain till the end. We sing of the
There's Hadwin, there's Jody. Oh my god, can I scroll a little faster?
who having broken the cycle.
Alright. That's cool and all. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the series. It ran pretty long. Oh, that's cool little anime looking artwork. I like it. This was a fun game. If you guys enjoyed it, you should definitely check it out. It's not a very linear path, so the outcomes are supposed to be different and there's no perfect ending. So, you know, my playthrough isn't the perfect playthrough. You know, I think I got a really good ending, but there's so much more you guys could do in your own playthrough. Different relationships you could see and build out and problems to solve, or, you know, there is a bad end, I heard, where you can just utterly fail and nothing changes, and that's a little disappointing, but, you know, it's a thing that can happen. So I encourage you guys to check it out yourselves, play it. This game was super fun. Hey, if you guys liked it, be sure to just hit a like on this one. If you're new to the channel and you watched everything, good for you. Be sure to subscribe. Tell your friends. I'm gonna have to find a new game to play. So, if you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. That's another good picture. Be sure to leave them down in the comments so I'll know that people are interested in seeing some more. Until next time, guys, I'm Rindis, and I will see you later. Have a good day. Bye.